episode, we learned that the World Bank makes loans. But where does the money come from?
The Federal Reserve is privileged to type zeros and ones and provide the World Bank funding. Now, normally Nigerians try and scam us through email that we won the lottery. Only the Federal Reserve writes back, "Oh no, you won the lottery. What's your bank info? I'll send you a billion, trillion, shabillion, gillion." But it isn't only the Federal Reserve. Yes, the World Bank also sells bonds in the private market. Here's how it works. First, the World Bank finds an investment sell-side bank to sell the bonds to the community, finding the buyers. They get a cut, and this helps set the market interest rate.
So if the primary business is conducted by private investment banks, what does the World Bank do?
They guarantee the loans, so if they go sour, I get to pay. We approve the projects. Dumb job that does. Half fail. While it's true that some fail, we made money in Burma on luxury hotels. Luxury hotels. That helped Burma get rich. If they weren't Buddhist. Little hotel money doesn't excuse your other sloppy failures. Even Paris Hilton would tell you to stop letting your mistakes leak. My porno tapes were not half as disgusting as your leaks. Have you no taste?
So how does the money flow?
Alright, so first there's the seller bank, then the buyer of the bonds is the lender bank. The lender bank's really lending the money by buying the bonds. So the money flows from there to the seller. Then it could go one of two ways. First, I'll explain it where it goes directly to the foreign government. So in this case, it goes from the lender bank to the seller bank, direct to the dictator.
Dictator Direct sounds like a website.
Sign up for World Bank loans at dictatordirect.com. They already have a Dictator Direct. Treasury.gov. The Congo and Rwanda had genocide, followed by slave labor to mine cobalt. But the World Bank gave them money anyway. In fact, they praised them for getting rid of their budget deficit. You lack proof. These are rumors, but there isn't photo or video evidence. Well, that's ironic, because the mined cobalt is used to manufacture smartphones. Make more smartphones or I'm gonna shoot you. Ah, he has a smartphone. He's gonna record this. So the World Bank funds corrupt dictators who use the money to solidify their power. On top of that, another problem is capital flight.
What is capital flight?
Normally the word capital flight means citizens of the country taking their money out. I wonder whose fault that is. Hint, hint, nobody flees low tax stock market rallies. But in this case, we're talking about the World Bank giving money to a corrupt right-wing dictator. Then he takes the money out of the country illegally through capital flight, even though the people of the country still owe the original loan. Talked about this already in the last episode. How can African dictators be right-wing if Republicans hate Africans? Gotta pick. I'm either racist or they're not right-wing.
Can you give us an example of capital flight?
Mobutu, a left-wing dictator, borrowed $14 billion from the World Bank. Then immediately $12 billion flowed out of the country. Considering the rest of the country had some pretty paltry tax returns, I'm thinking it's probably him. But what do I know? I'm not an expert World Bank planner. So then the country now owes the World Bank $18 billion in interest payments. Meanwhile, Mobutu spent the money shopping in Paris. Why he couldn't have just bought that same women's hat on eBay for $5.99 is how I know he's a left-wing dictator.
I'm confused. So you agree with the liberal?
Me and the liberal agree that African capital flight is a problem. We disagree over the solution. He wants international capital controls, meaning all American flows to the Cayman Islands he wants to audit and control, just so he can say, I'm just checking it isn't one of the dictators that we armed and put into power. Just relax. The International IRS audit is your friend. Hey, why does the IRS not use lube? Tea Party budget cuts. Oh! Capital controls? How is it that liberals are okay with illegal criminal immigrants crossing the border, but not productive investment capital? In that case, I could get out of this by just saying, I got a Mexican in my asshole. Oh, this is an immigration case? You're free to go. Searching your asshole for lost money. I thought we were done making jokes about Charlie Sheen. And And the problem is American banks. See, sometimes these banks will lend money to the corrupt third world dictator through the World Bank. Then the corrupt dictator will deposit that money through capital flight in those same banks. So they get to keep their money, but earn the difference between the lending rate and the deposit rate.
Can you explain this with a real-world example?
In November of 1976, Argentina's central bank under Perón borrowed $30 million at 8.75%. That same month, Chase Manhattan Bank, the company that lent the money, received an increase in deposits of $22 million, paying an interest rate of 5.5%. Now, we don't know exactly where that money came from, but it's extremely likely that Perón recycled it back to the same bank, meaning Chase gets to keep the money on their balance sheet, but earn the difference between those two interest rates. Maybe that's why they call it Chase. You never actually catch the money. This is fake news at best. You have no proof those increase in deposits were Perón. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's fake. Maybe it's Maybelline. Chase obviously recycles money. Their logo has recycling on it. On top of that, how can you say I don't have proof when Citigroup pled guilty to helping Sani Abacha, the Nigerian dictator, recycle money out of the country? And in Chile, tax authorities found that Citigroup helped Augusto Pinochet to also open accounts. That's two dictators that Citigroup lent to through the World Bank that they then recycled money back onto Citigroup's balance sheets. It's ironic that it's named Citigroup when whoever they loan to can never afford to make it out of a hut. You imbecile! That's the exact problem I told you about earlier with fractional reserve banking, where the bank only has to keep a small fraction of their assets actually at the bank and the rest can be lent out. The answer isn't capital controls, it's a currency like Bitcoin that prevents it. While I agree with you that fractional reserve banking is enabling this situation, if you think about it, here we're dealing with the opposite, because the bank, instead of actually lending the money out, is keeping it on their own balance sheet. The problem is they're not fractional reserve banking. Capital controls will stop the capital flight. How can the government control the situation with capital controls, but can't control the money being lent to mass murderers in the first place? Look, if the World Bank is going to guarantee repayment of the loans regardless of the project's success, then it creates an environment where banks are motivated to lend to the most corrupt dictators because they're the ones most likely to recycle it back to those same banks. It's a totally perverse situation. If you're pro fractional reserve banking and pro World Bank loan guarantees, you're pro genocide. Haven't you seen the clip of Adolf Hitler?
Ja, es ist! Die gesamte Generalität ist nichts weiter als ein Haufen niederträchtiger, treuloser Feiglinge!
Mein Führer, ich kann nicht zulassen, dass die Soldaten, die für Sie
Ihr
verbringen...
seid Feiglinge! Verreiter, Versager!
Mein Führer, was Sie da sagen, ist ungeheuerlich.
Let's finish here. In part 3, we'll discuss the World Bank's biggest secret. Please share this video.
There's a third part. You always keep them wanting more. Like a Chase Bank borrower. How is it you want to stick your fingers up my ass with regulation, but let African dictators off the hook? We're sticking fingers up their asses too. Maybe that's why Mobutu wears a women's hat. You know, technically that makes him transgender. I told you he's a left-wing dictator.